Famous landmarks from different countries. USA. The famous landmark is Statue of Liberty. Brazil. The famous landmark is Christ the Redeemer. Mexico. The famous landmark is Chichen Itza. Canada. The famous landmark is CN Tower. United Kingdom. The famous landmark is Stonehenge. Netherlands. The famous landmark is Kinderdijk. Spain. The famous landmark is La Sagrada Familia. Germany. The famous landmark is Brandenburg Gate. France. The famous landmark is Eiffel Tower. Italy. The famous landmark is Colosseum. Turkey. The famous landmark is Hagia Sophia. Egypt. The famous landmark is Great Pyramid of Giza. Iraq. The famous landmark is Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Iran. The famous landmark is Shah Mosque. Saudi Arabia. The famous landmark is Makkah Sharif. UAE. The famous landmark is Burj Khalifa. Qatar. The famous landmark is Khalifa International Stadium. Jordan. The famous landmark is PT Petro. Russia. The famous landmark is St. Basil's Cathedral. China. The famous landmark is Great Wall of China. South Korea. The famous landmark is Gyeongbokgung Palace. Japan. The famous landmark is Tokyo Tower. Thailand. The famous landmark is Wat Arun. Malaysia. The famous landmark is Petronas Twin Towers. Indonesia. The famous landmark is Monas. Australia. The famous landmark is Sydney Opera House. Bangladesh. The famous landmark is Lal Bagh Fort. Pakistan. The famous landmark is Shah Faisal Masjid. Sri Lanka. The famous landmark is Sigiriya Rock. India. The famous landmark is Taj Mahal.